Home entertainment platforms such as Netflix have recorded a surge in subscribers in the last few months, thanks to lockdowns due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, people around the world have turned to online video streaming services in addition to television as their means of consuming content. Amid a time of increased anxiety and loneliness, watching and rewatching TV shows is comforting and helpful during this time. But why would government want to now regulate the content of these streaming shows? We discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. Welcome to this weekend edition of The Chiefs, and with us right now are Ana Marie Pamintuan of the Philippine Star and Luchi Cruz Valdez, the head of News 5, and in a little bit we will have also Robbie Lampay of One News. Good evening, bossing, and happy weekend. Wala pa yung tropa natin.
Wala pa eh.
Baka napaga yung weekend nila.
Excited ako sa topic.
But I was advised to bring in our guest immediately. So I suppose you can bring him in already.
Yeah.
Okay. Joining us today, our first guest for tonight is Atty. Enrique Dela Cruz. He is also a professor of media and technology law from the University of Santo Tomas. Attorney, good evening po and welcome to the Chiefs.
Good evening, Ed and Ma'am Luchi. Nice to see you again.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Joining us online is Ana Marie Pamintuan of the Philippine Star from the port area in Manila. Ami.
Yes. Good evening po.
Okay. Sir, let's go straight to the point. Sabi ng MTRCB, they also intend to regulate streaming. That means iFlix, Netflix, and all those other shows that you will see on your phones, tablets, and of course, your TV sets. These are online streaming platforms. Nasa mandate ba ng MTRCB yun as per PD 1986?
Wala, Ed. No? Obviously, hindi nauunawaan ng MTRCB yung sinasabi nila. Kasi ang mandate nila ay movies and television. So, hindi porket mayroong pelikula at TV shows sa Netflix or online streaming platforms ay movies and TV na ang dapat regulatory model na gagamitin mo. Kasi kung titingnan mo, ang internet ay meron ding voice over internet protocol, may IRC, may telepathy. Pwede rin siyang telecommunications, hindi ba? So pwede rin siyang gamitin sa print dahil meron ding mga newspapers na online. So ano gagamitin mong model? Pang model ba ng movies and television? O model ba ng radio? Telecommunications o model ba ng print ang gagamitin mo para i-regulate ang internet. So mali ang pananaw ng MTRCB dahil limitado ang kapangyarihan nila sa kanilang charter and wala sa charter nila ang internet.
Well, ang argument nila, Attorney Buko, is that maraming movies na lumalabas sa Netflix. Yung mga movies na yon, yun ang responsibilidad nila na i-rate or i-monitor. So parang ang point nila is since maraming movies nga naman na pinapalabas doon, dapat at least may control sila ron.
Yun nga ang maling pangunawa, Ma'am Luchi, dahil nung ginawa ang charter, nung ibinigay ang kapangyarihan ng MTRCB ng Presidential Decree 1986, wala pa itong Netflix, wala pa yung over-the-top or yung OTT platform. So, hindi pwedeng i-interpret yung provision ng batas nila na sakupin ng isang bagay na hindi pa nga naiimbento nung panahon na ibinigay ito. No? So, obviously, wala sa charter nila at kailangan nilang mag-approach ng ibang model o gumamit ng ibang modelo kung nais nilang i-regulate yung mga lumalabas na pelikula kasi ang charter nila ay filter at use. Samantalang ang OTT o yung mga internet live streaming, ang filter niyan is at source. Ang nasusunod, kung ano ilalabas sa Netflix, ay hindi yung mga nanonood sa Pilipinas. Kung hindi yung nagko-control mismo ng source niya, which is outside of the Philippines.
Pero tayo yung gumagamit and the MTRCB wants control over the content. Now you said nga na bago nga tong technology na to, in the absence of a law allowing MTRCB, meron bang agency na pwedeng mag-regulate ng content itong napapanood ng maraming Pilipino? Saka kung wala ng law, do we need to pass a law?
Yes. Yung second question, unahin natin, do we need to pass a law? The answer is yes. Because the current laws do not address the problems.
So,
For
wala.
example, yes, wala po. Halimbawa po, ang Philippine Star ay nasa online. Meron kayong online media. The only regulation they can do is either charge you with libel, which is after subsequent punishment. But nothing prior. They cannot control from the source. Nakalabas na yan in a matter of seconds eh. So puro prior or puro subsequent punishment lang ang mangyayari. It's not regulation. That's penalty. That's prosecution.
Attorney, may tanong lang po ako kasi yung MTRCB, di ba? It's Movie Television Review and Classification Board. It is not regulate and censor. A lot of people automatically equate this with censorship, di ba? So it's actually just review and classification. At the same time, on the practical level, you're pointing out, hindi naman nila makokontrol yung source, and actually pati yung end user, hindi naman nila makokontrol. Ako naman yung may subscription, di ba? Ako naman may gusto magpalabas. Kahit pa for adults yan or R18 yan, if my kids want to watch it, nasa sa akin na yun, nasa pet, hindi po pa. Then my question is, outside of the practicalities here and outside of the legalities, what's the harm? What's the worst that can happen?
Oh, that's the worst that can happen is that we will live in a country where people will decide what we can watch and what we cannot watch. And I don't want to live in that kind of country where a group of people will decide for me what I can and cannot watch.
Pero sir, isn't that happening already now? MTRCB right now regulates movies and television, hindi nga lang online, pero what we see in cinemas and on TV.
Actually, nire-rate lang nila, Ed eh. Ang nangyayari, hindi naman nila pwedeng sabihin bawal ipalabas. Ang sasabihin lang nila ay rating.
Pero nagka-cut din sila ng eksena.
Actually, nag-a-advise sila ng cut. Ang nagka-cut yung mismong pelikula. Yung mismong
para pumasok sa classification
source.
Yes.
Yung sinasabi kong filter at source. Kasi kung hindi mo ika-cut, hindi kita bibigyan ng rating na gusto mo. Kung gusto mo kumita, bibigyan kita ng rated na PG para bibigyan kita ng rated na mas mababa ang restrictions, general patronage, halimbawa, pero tanggalin mo ang mga eksenang ito. Eventually, ikaw ang natatanggal. Pero ito ay regulation ng filter source.
Sinasabi rin nila, ang gagawin daw nila dito, post-monitoring. O, hindi ba yun, in a way, hindi yun prior, di ba? Ano ang sabi mo ron?
Ang problema kasi doon, Ma'am Lucy, pwede yung subsequent punishment kung yung ipapunish mo ay nasa loob ng control or jurisdiction mo. Tulad halimbawa ng One News, ng Philippine Star, ng TV5. Kayo ay naririto, pag nag-broadcast kayo ng isang bagay na labag sa batas, pwede kayong parusahan. Ito ang print media model at broadcast model. Iniisip ni MTRCB na broadcast at print ang gagamitin niyang model. Mali, kasi movie and TV siya eh. So since wala sa iyo ang source, kahit na yan ay magpalabas ng pornography sa Netflix, sino ang paparusahan mo? Ang magagawa mo lang ay i-limit ang access or i-deny ang access. At yan ang ginagamit na modelo ng lahat ng bansa sa buong mundo. Limit access or deny access.
Pero kunyari, South Korea daw, hindi ganyan. It takes 6 months daw for some films to get through to Netflix, South Korea. So yun ang sinasabi na hindi naman daw lang tayo ang naghihigpit. Ano nang masasabi?
Pero Ma'am Lucy, yung formula na ginamit po ng Korea, yung ICE office, yung Internet Communications and Ethics Office, bago yun, Pero ang ginagawa nila is limiting access lang din. Yung mga streaming po kasi na yan, dumadaan yan sa mga internet service providers na nasa Pilipinas. Nasa kanila, nasa Korea. So ang kinokontrol nila ay yung mga internet service providers. Sabi nila sa kanila na ito ang code of conduct, pag sumuway kayo dito, kayo ang tatanggalan namin ng lisensya. Yung mga nagpo-provide ng internet access. Sa makatwid, hindi content ang nire-regulate talaga nila. Technically, ang nire-regulate nila access.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yun ang pwedeng gawin dito, you're saying?
Yes, pero hindi MTRCB. Kasi ang nagre-regulate ng access ay NTC.
NTC.
Hindi MTRCB. So mali ang concept kasi ng MTRCB na akala niya kaya niyang kontrolin ang access. Pero ang access sa internet service providers, that's telecommunications. That's NTC. Yung content, wala ka talaga magagawa kasi wala sa iyo ang source.
Alright. Yeah. Okay.
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 Attorney Enrique Dela Cruz, Professor of Media and Technology Law ng USC. Sir, thank you very much for joining us. Sayang lang ang iksi ng time niyo. Pero sir, thank you for joining us tonight.
Salamat. Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Okay, let's bring in our next guest. Of course, we were listening to Attorney Enrique Dela Cruz, Professor of Media and Technology Law. Now let's bring in the chairperson of the MTRCB mismo. Is Chairperson Arenas ready? Yeah. Si MTRCB Chairperson Rachel Arenas. Ma'am, thank you for joining us tonight.
Hi, ma'am.
Good evening.
Good evening po.
Good evening.
Hi.
Good evening po.
Hi, good evening
Can you hear us po?
to Ma'am Lucy and Ma'am Ami and Sir Ed and Sir Robbie. Magandang gabi po sa inyo. Thank you for having
Magandang gabi
me.
po.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Well, thank you po also for joining us tonight. Ma'am, para lang po klaro, para we are sure that we're all working along, we're working the same page. Tell us po, from the perspective of the MTRCB, ano po talaga ang plano ninyo with regard to these streaming platforms? Para po malinaw tayo, para we're all working the same page.
Ma'am, naririnig po nyo kami?
Ma'am, can you hear us?
Now, yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Yes, yes.
Ma'am, ulitin ko lang po. Para lang po
But
we're
I
working on the
can't
same
hear,
page. Ano
Sir
po yung
Ed.
plano ng MTRCB with regard to yung streaming platforms?
Ed.
You can't hear Ed. Okay, can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, I
This
can.
is from,
Yes,
okay.
I can.
Well, Ed's question is very well basic. Start us off in your own words. What exactly is this proposal that has gotten people riled up? But we'll take it from you first. Ano po ba exactly ang proposal ng MTRCB with regards to Netflix and other streaming platforms?
Well, because yesterday there was a hearing, in the Senate, and they were talking about consumers and merchants engage in internet transactions. The head of our legal was there, and there was a question regarding the video on demand providers, but there wasn't enough time also to explain. So I will take this time to explain also to our listeners and our viewers that first of all, it's true that the framers of the law at the time didn't foresee that there was going to be an internet. But then it serves our purpose now because under the law it says any motion picture on whatever medium and with whatever mechanism or equipment they are projected and in whatever material they are preserved or recorded for instant projection. I guess because at the time they wanted so much to support the industry at the time, to help the economy, and they encompassed all. While it is true that maybe they didn't foresee that there would be such a thing because one of us, at the time, could predict that there would be a Netflix now. But with a provision like this in our law, it gives us authority to regulate. I just want to also explain to the people watching. Pag naririnig kasi nila yung MTRCB, it's always like a negative, reaction that it's censorship. It's actually not. We've been engaging with the video on demand providers for more than a year or even more than a year. We've met with them. They came to the office. They're amenable to our proposal. We asked them first that since you're doing business here in the Philippines, but they don't have an office kasi here. They work through they work with the law office, and since you're doing business here and you have a lot of subscribers coming from the Philippines, can we ask you to in good faith to register with us? Kasi that's one of the requirements, no? And second, since we have a different culture from other countries, we will make our guiding working draft, our guiding principles in how to best regulate you. But of course, we encourage self-regulation, and we will do post-monitoring after. No, we were going to do a post-monitoring. Um, we always revisit our working draft, although it's finished. And we are still going to go through the process of public consultation with our stakeholders. So there's actually nothing really to fear. I understand the anger of and the reaction of the madlang people out there, but let me assure you that your telenovelas will be there. Your Korean telenovelas will be there. Netflix will be there. iFlix will be there. iWant will be there. But we just want the VOD providers to align with our classification.
Yeah,
So,
but ma'am, what does that mean? What does regulation mean? What will it look like ultimately at the end of the at the end user experience? What will that translate to? How will we feel it when you say na pumayag ang streaming platforms to come under some kind of regulation?
No, it's it all like earlier I heard during the last interview in Korea. I don't know if it's just access because they review each and every material. That's why it takes 6 months to a year before it goes to it shows in Korea, because they outsource the reviewers. They review each and every material in all of the VOD providers. So as an end user, it's really because our mandate is really first and foremost to protect the viewers. That one, the material is age appropriate. Number two, it's not pirated. It will really what we're asking them is to um, classify their materials based on the details of our classification, because they adjust naman eh. When we were talking with them, in fairness to them, they were really they were cooperating with us. And I want to thank them. In fact, they even invited us to a conference that Netflix hosted in ADB. And we said that we will continue our collaboration. And in fairness, they are very cooperative. And I told them that allow us, give us time to make our guidelines, and we will sit down again. We will sit down with you and our other stakeholders, because it's not a policy yet. We have to go through a process, and we have to also
But
listen
it's
to our
just, but
stakeholders.
it's
Yes.
it's it's going to be just like the things we see in the movie. It's just classification. Kumbaga, lalabas lang diyan o Gito or patnubay at gabay kailangan and so on. Ganun lang. Pero mapapanood pa rin ng mga tao.
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
But as I said, we're going to do strict monitoring that they are really following our classification. But of course, recently we had a complaint about a show on Netflix, and we replied to them, no. Meron din kami mga reklamo na ganon, no. But it's not something that we're going to say, okay, you can't show that anymore. That's the time that we're going to step in, talk to them, and say, what are we going to do with this? We have to work together on how are we going to address this. But it's also true and honest. I want to be honest with you that it's also very difficult, because ang daming VOD providers all over. I mean, the web, it's another animal. It's a problem all over the world. I'm not going to say here, yes, we can do it and review everything like Korea does, because we can't. That's
But you
why
said you
we
talked
are
to
doing,
Netflix.
we
You
want
said
a
you talked.
co-regulation, and we need our stakeholders and the viewers to be our partners as well, no? But not because, for example, they say that it's impractical, that we're not going to do it anymore. We've been asked many times during hearings in Congress, are you going to do something about Netflix? Are you monitoring YouTube? Are you monitoring, are you monitoring Facebook? So sa amin naman, it's not about the revenue. It's really just about strengthening the community standards of the providers. That's one. Number two, empowering our viewers, especially the parents. I understand that there are parental controls that are set, no? And I'm sure you being parents, you do that. But going around in our province or in our district, I see 13 years old and below have access to Netflix on their phone. They are subscribed to Netflix, no? So it's really empowering them to be more discerning, but because like I said, not everybody naman is like you that switch on their parental controls in their apps. But I just ask our viewers now that I understand that you're very angry. It wasn't explained very well because there was just one line that was captured during the hearing. So this is an opportunity for me to explain at magpaliwanag sa inyo that we're not censoring. I hope that you don't see MTRCB as a censorship board. We ask your help, in fact, the viewers to help us. And this will go through a long process because, of course, pagdedebatihan pa yan, many probably would also question the mandate of MTRCB, but it's written in the law. And what we're only asking the video on demand providers is you do self-regulation with the parameters set forth by law.
Ma'am, question lang po. So just to be clear po, classification lang po yung MTRCB, or do you also have the power to approve, disapprove, or delete? I asked that kasi yung PD 1986. I'm reading section 3C. Yun lang po. I'm not sure if this has been amended by any later law. Pero section 3C of PD 1936, to approve or disapprove, delete objectionable portions, and prohibit the importation, exportation, production, copying, distribution, etc., of those that are contrary to law, good customs, injurious to the prestige of the Philippines, those that tend to incite subversion, insurrection, rebellion, sedition, and all the way down the line. So yun po, I just like to be sure na baka na-amend ito, or is it still the same law operational?
No, it's still the same. We have the MTRC bill hasn't been amended. Since 1985.
Opo. Kasi in this case po, it's section 3C appears to give the MTRC, the board, authority to censor, approve, disapprove, delete. Not just cultural aspects, but political aspects as well. So that's why po I'm asking for clarity. Are you just asking for classification powers over these streaming shows, or are you also going to look at content and decide whether or not they can be aired?
Like when we do reviews in the office now, I've mentioned this before. The times have changed also. Before yung afternoon shows, there are no afternoon shows. Those are dead hours. But now it's called afternoon prime time. And we adjust with the times. Before naman, like years ago, it was really a censorship board. But now we have best practices. We tell them that this is what you have to do, so that this is what you have to do to get that rating. We will not impose it on you, but it is voluntary. So, for example, viewers that, for instance, there is a show in Netflix that's really so violent, and it goes beyond R18, and we're only R18. Then they come to us, and then we call. That's the time we'll step in and call on them. What are we gonna do with this? Are you going to edit it? Are you going to voluntarily edit, or are you going to voluntarily pull it out from your library? Because if you notice also, I believe that there is a different library for every country. Like, for example, in your Netflix, when they recommend something to you, it's different from what they recommend to me. Yes. I think there's an algorithm that they follow, that it's based on what you watch, and that's what they're going to recommend to you. So that's another thing that we are also addressing in our guidelines.
Yes.
But I understand you've been talking. You mentioned that you are already talking with the live streaming groups. You've talked to Netflix.
Ma'am, I can't hear you po.
Ano yan?
I mean, she can't hear you.
You can't hear me.
Okay. Go ahead, Ami.
tatanong ko lang if she has talked to Netflix, saka ano nga yung binabalak nila, and when are you planning to start this? I mean, there must be thousands of movies in Netflix na kailangan you're asking them to classify all these movies based on our classification system. Pumayag ba sila dun? I mean, is that even possible?
Yeah, it is. It is actually. They're just going to change the what do you call the advisory.
Yes.
Nag-usap naman kami, no, when I told them about our what our classification is about, they were amenable naman. That's why I said give us time to craft our guidelines and look at it. We haven't sat down again. We're just, as I said, the working draft. We revisit it often, and we also haven't started actually distributing it to our stakeholders. So it's really going to be a process together with all the video on demand players here in the Philippines.
But
you will be conducting post monitoring. Do you have enough people to do that?
Actually, to that's why I mentioned for earlier, Ma'am Annie, that we also need your help, no? We need our stakeholders' help, because it's really, like I said, I want to be honest, that it's really, really difficult, because there are thousands of titles, thousands of content. And but like I said, not because it's impractical. When they say that it's impractical, that we are not going to pursue with what's written in the law. Slowly, we have to also do something about it, and that's what we've been working on for almost a year now. It's just that it saddens me that because this issue was not very well explained yesterday, and it came out this way, which angers a lot of people. And like I said, that hindi pa naman po ito cast in stone. We are waiting for them. No, we will have to wait for them to read our guidelines. That's because that's what we agreed upon. And if and when that all of our stakeholders agree to it, and then the board can vote for it to become a policy.
Ma'am, kanina po, inabanggit nyo that, when people hear MTRCB, they even misconstrue the name. They still think C means censorship. It doesn't mean that. It means classification. But they are afraid of that term. Another term, however, that people also get riled up about is culture. Kanina nabanggit nyo that the part of the discussions with Netflix is to be considerate as well, o na iba ang culture dito. And people will take that different ways as well. I mean, you can understand why for some people that also represents a slippery slope. Just going back to what you said about culture, what exactly does that mean? Do you believe that there are certain content na pinapalabas sa Netflix ngayon that is inappropriate for Filipino culture?
Well, I haven't seen all, no, that they have, no. So far, the things that I've watched so far, I haven't seen something that would be against, or something that would be for me to say that I would want to take out from Netflix, no. But for example, they when I explain to them, like for example, again, I will give Korea as an example. In Korea, they review porn. That won't be acceptable to us in our culture. They review porn, they X-porn. And in fact, I as leaning on, I'm leaning towards, I'm more liberated than others, I can say. But I myself was shocked going inside the room when all the TVs were showing porn. So I asked myself, na ako na, I'm born in another generation, would be a little bit more open to that, and I am still shocked. So I explained that to them, and I said, that there are like for example, even in our teleseries that we all watch, every day I have complaints. about what they see on TV. Why like this? Why like that? Why is it too violent? Why there's so much blood? Why is this? Even with our own board members. So we may probably sometimes appear that we have matured in the choices that we make, maybe, but then there's still some big part of us that are still conservative, very Filipino. That's why also that we took time to go around in the past, no, to have our matalinong panonood, bringing MTRCB to different barangays and provinces to explain to them the importance of our classification, at the same time to educate the viewers, for them to make more intelligent choices in what they should watch.
Okay, ma'am.
I tell them, for example, that not because that you watch a movie that you don't know the stars, it doesn't mean it's not a good movie. If you will ask, because I myself did the survey, when I go to the barangay, manonood ka ba ng sine na ito ang bida, pero hindi maganda? Or manonood ka ba ng sine na hindi mo kilala yung bida, pero maganda yung storya? So they would still choose, majority would still choose to watch a movie that they know who the bidas are. So it's also our way when we used to go around, but we can't do that now, to tell them that, it's not really just about, who the stars are, but there are a lot of regional filmmakers that make movies that are really worth watching.
Ma'am,
Of course, we do appreciate the
Netflix
Sige, sige.
and you, okay? As a regular, I'm a regular, okay? I just want to
Ma'am,
know.
sorry po, I can't hear you, ma'am.
Okay.
Wala.
Delay lang yung naririnig niya. Subukan
Ma'am,
mo lang.
can you hear me now?
Yes
Ma'am?
po.
Okay.
Yes po.
Ako po ay regular ng mga yan. Netflix, View, Prime. Ang tanong ko, if you're going to say that let's assume that you will be pushing through with this exercise, no? Gaano katagal ang prosesong yan? Does that mean na yung access ko rin sa mga films na pinapalabas na sa buong mundo ay mapapanood ko lang 6 months later sa dami nga kanyo ng dapat i-monitor? How does
Hindi
this
po.
affect the process?
No, it won't affect it won't affect what you're going to watch. I mean, like I said, we're not going to review the materials like how Korea does it, that they review each and every material. They will self-regulate, and we will just do post-monitoring. So nothing will change with what you're going to
So
watch.
they will self-classify. They will classify their own, according to your own guidelines.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I see.
Ma'am, we do appreciate your intent to
Yes,
just classify.
May
Sorry.
tanong pa po
Well,
yata si Ma'am Richie.
Okay, go ahead.
So post-monitoring, pag may nagreklamo, anong gagawin? I-hold back ba muna ang pagpapalabas? Or anong magiging proseso nun? Kasi ang concern ko is, standards are always relative. What may be disgusting to someone may be acceptable to another, no?
That's correct. I agree with you, ma'am.
So doon pa lang, even in the post-monitoring, the fear is baka ipa-pull down pag may nagreklamo. Paano ho yun?
No, because yung sa amin naman po, if somebody complains, syempre naman po, we're very reasonable. Not because, like you said, somebody complains, may nagreklamo na, because some actually just look at one scene. They say, okay, this is very violent, this scene, but they don't look at the entire, the whole picture, the whole movie, no? They only see, there's only, like, for example, 5 minutes of violence, and they feel that it's not anymore suitable, no? But we're very reasonable naman po. We're not going to, like, just pull it out and say, okay, you cannot show that anymore. At the same time, we are going to call on the providers also to explain why just like what we do now in MTRCB, no? And we're going to sit down and both MTRCB and the providers will address it in the most practical way that we can, no? So
Yes, but ma'am, sorry,
yes,
just
yes,
on the
sir. Opo.
practicality, I can understand if a movie producer here in the Philippines or a television producer says, "Oh, we need to get under PG. We need to get under PG-13. We cannot be R-18," and so there will be that conversation with you. I understand that because they need to make it to the theaters to make their money. But in this case, sa Netflix, it brings up the question of the practicality. You can classify, as you said, but at the end of the day, I'm the ultimate censor in my household. Hindi po ba? Ako yung magde-decide. Even if pumayag sila, sige, I will call it R18 para daw lahat ng parents. But at the end of the day, that's still my household. It is still up to me to decide whether or not I will let my minor watch, for example, The Last Temptation of Christ. No, never mind sex at all. But I use that as an example because Last Temptation of Christ was in fact censored by the Singaporean government, and some
One year.
countries will draw the lines along the lines of religion, not necessarily sex.
Sure.
But after you classify it, at the end of the day, ito yung tanong ng mga tao sa practicality. At the end of the day, ako rin naman magde-decide eh. Di ba? You can classify it, but if it stops there, that's fine. But we get the sense that pagka kinlasify nyo tapos meron pa rin mga reports na napapanood pa rin ng mga bata, is there a thought in MTRCB's mind that we need to go further?
We have actually a protocol in our working draft, no, that which I would first that we have a protocol in our working draft for you to proceed. So that's one safeguard that we have, and I don't want to discuss it in detail until our other stakeholders would read it, because it's not after all this issue that's been going around now. We're going to revisit again our working draft, no, although it's finished, like I said. We have a protocol for that also, sir. Like you said, sabi mo nga na, it's up to you actually what you want to show
Well,
the minors in your house, di ba?
okay.
After all, that's your home, di ba?
Oh,
So,
well, okay yung may
yes.
okay yung may protocol, but I think our question is not so much the protocol. I think our question is, what is the ultimate intent? Di ba? If you're concerned about content being consumed by people who are not at age appropriate to that content, and at the end of the day, you cannot control it at the end of the end user. You can only control it at the end of the source, as Atty. Dela Cruz was saying kanina. Is that part of the intent, to control it at the point of the source, meaning Netflix?
Well, you have a point there, no. The intent really is, first of all, that we have let me go back lang, no, and then I'll go back to your question, sir. That our first our paramount what do you call this goal, no, is really to what do you call this is the further protection of the viewers. If, for example, the parents would want their minors to watch it, then that's the responsibility already. But as the responsibility of the MTRCB implementing the law to make sure that the materials are age appropriate, then we did our job. But if, for example, the parents themselves would want their minors to watch it, then we cannot do anything about that anymore. But us being working with the agency that has that law in our mandate, then we can say that we implemented what we were supposed to, based on our mandate as the MTRCB. Another thing that I would want to mention, that if the registration of the video on demand providers with us would assure that, first, like I said, the materials are age appropriate. Number two, that no content prohibited by law is shown, and number three, that the materials are not pirated. But I also want to again appeal to you also, that I want to assure you that, number one, Ma'am Luchi, it will not be delayed for 6 months to a year. that will not change. Number two, for all that are watching Korean telenovela, they will still continue to watch telenovela and it will not be delayed.
Safe naman yung
ano po?
safe naman yung mga yun. Censored na yata yung mga yun eh.
Number three, that there's nothing actually to fear in terms of saying that we will curtail your freedom to choose. Like you said, sabi nga ni Sir, that kung gusto nila ipanood din later on, you know, they're still going to watch it anyways. So, and then number four, that this is a process. This is a process that we'll have to go through. It's not as if that if we want it, we're going to implement it without consulting the public and our stakeholders. That's what I can assure the public. So I also appeal to them that I understand it's been 6 months, all of us are home. Kids are also studying from home. Maybe some haven't gone out for 3 months or 2 months. This pandemic has changed our lives. This is not to take that away from them. It will take pa siguro a couple of months, even maybe more, for us to all agree on what policy is best to adopt.
All right. Maraming salamat po sa inyo. Yeah. MTRCB Chair Rachel Arenas. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Maraming salamat po.
Thank you.
Ma'am, if you have some questions also, you can actually text me, so you can be assured that I will answer po if there are other questions that you may have.
Okay.
All right.
Okay,
Thank
salamat
you.
po.
Thank you. Thank you rin po sa pagkakataong ito. Thank you.
We will just go into a break, so please stay with us.
Welcome back to the Chiefs. We are now in the final stage of our conversation. And now joining us is Undersecretary Benito Bengzon of the Department of Tourism. Good evening, Usec Bengzon. Welcome po to the Chiefs. Malinaw po tayo. Mukhang wala yata yung audio.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay na. Ayan,
Okay, good. I'll speak a little louder.
Okay, thank you. From Malacanang, Usec today, ang sabi po ng palasyo the President has approved the gradual reopening of tourism all over the country. Tapos nag-uumpisa na rin yung mga tourism bubbles natin, no? How practical is this? Talaga bang kaya na natin? Ano nang situation ngayon?
Well, ang laging sinasabi ni Secretary Berna Romulo Puyat is we have to take a slow but steady approach, no, when it comes to reopening destinations and yung resuming tourism activities. Yung tanong tungkol dun sa tourism bubble, no, we see it really as an opportunity to jumpstart tourism activities in selected destinations. Yung destinations where mababa yung kaso ng COVID, no, or walang kaso. So part of the commitment of the DOT is to help bring tourism activities back, to bring livelihood back, and the way to do this is to adopt a calculated approach, no, by identifying tourism bubbles.
Nag-reopen ang yung Baguio ngayon, di ba? Nag-reopen siya. And we just won an award sa one of the best, actually, the best overseas diving site in the Philippines. So, maganda yan para sa El Nido, for example. Pero ano yung takbo ng mga, yung mga tao mismo, are you seeing interest among people to actually travel?
We just had a survey conducted a couple of months back. It's a Philippine travel survey that looked at the sentiments of Filipinos. And the encouraging thing about this is that about 77% of the 12,000 respondents said that they are willing to travel even without a vaccine. So kitang-kita natin that the appetite for travel is still there. Of course, the challenge is to make sure that the health and safety protocols are in place in all the destinations that we will be reopening. And lagi ko rin binabanggit ito the discipline of the traveler still has to be there. But if the question is, do Filipinos still want to travel? The appetite for traveling is still there, and in a way, this is also good news for us because the thrust of the department, together with the private sector, is to push for the domestic tourism, in the next 6 to 12 months.
Usec,
Actually, sir,
ko lang yung
people
insight
want to
na yun,
travel.
sandali, Usec. Ano lang, doon sa travel, ako, magtataas ako ng kamay, gusto ko mag-travel. But biglang quitaw ako, mapapatigil ako once I start thinking about it. So, the serious question, define travel. I mean, according to the survey, when Filipinos say they are willing, they are eager to travel, what are they thinking of? Are they thinking land travel, or are they saying kahit eroplano, mag-eroplano ako, or vapor, magbabapor ako?
That's a very good question. Lumabas din yan sa survey namin. And not surprisingly, many of those who responded said that they will start with land travel. Tsaka mga short distances. Kasi parang tatansyahin muna nila yan. So yung number one that came out in the survey is that people still want to go to the beach or mga outdoor activities. Yung pangalawa na lumabas is yung land travel, with family particularly. And then yung number 3 na lumabas, staycation. So to go back to land travel, ang nakikita namin dyan is that Filipinos will start traveling short distances muna, siguro within a 1 hour radius, 2 hours. Pag bumalik na yung kumpiyansa nila, saka sila babiyahin na mas matagal. And eventually, pag pinayagan na yung non-essential domestic air travel, then you will see movement already among domestic tourists.
Ako, sir, it's clear that people want to travel. I think the question of a lot of people now is, saan sila pwedeng pumunta and what are the restrictions? For example, I think Baguio City and Region 1, meron silang travel bubble of some sort. Ibig sabihin, sila lang ang pwedeng gumala doon sa bubble na yon. So tell us about that. Let's go to specifics para hindi masyadong conceptual. If people really want to travel, where can they go and what do they have to keep in mind?
Well, dun sa guidelines, based on the guidelines of the IATF, yung tourism activities will only be allowed in areas that are under modified GCQ. And then on top of that, aside from it being under modified GCQ, very, very important that the LGU has already given the go signal to resume tourism. So that is what we saw the other day. Nakita po natin, meron tayong concept na travel bubble. Ang tawag dito is yung Reef to Ridge, which involves Baguio City and then the neighboring provinces of La Union, Ilocos Sur, Ilocos Norte. So the idea here is to promote travel within that bubble. In other words, parang kino-contain mo muna yung movement ng mga travelers doon sa lugar na na-control mo na rin yung COVID.
Doon po ba sa survey, meron din po bang sinabi ang mga respondents in terms of the safety of the accommodations? Halimbawa, kasi if they're planning for a 2-day, 1 night, or 3 days, 2 nights, is that a factor? Was that something that went into the survey somehow? I mean, how long of vacation time were they actually planning on going to?
Actually, lumabas yun. That actually came out. Which yung lumabas doon, syempre, andun pa rin yung concern for the health and safety standards, specifically in accommodation facilities. Kaya ang ginawa namin when we started drafting the guidelines for the different tourism enterprises, nauna po yung accommodation establishment. So that we started with health and safety guidelines governing the operations of accommodation establishments. Sinundan po namin yan ng tourist transport companies, pagkatapos restaurants, and then pagkatapos yung MICE, meetings, incentives, conventions, and exhibitions. Pagbalik to sa accommodations, ano yung mga examples ng mga safety protocols na kasama dun sa guidelines? So may mga limit tayo sa pwedeng mag-check-in doon sa loob ng guest room. Pagdating sa front desk, may mga recommendations with respect to yung mga acrylic glass partition. Siyempre, nire-recommenda din natin na more of online reservations. Pagdating doon sa dining, may mga capacity requirements din tayo. So, all these health and safety guidelines were crafted also for the safety not only of the tourists but also yung safety ng workers at saka siyempre safety na rin ng local community.
Does that mean more costly accommodations then?
Well, napag-usapan din yan na will it result in higher cost? Ang assurance naman sa amin ng mga accommodation establishments is yung business model nila will allow them to come up with a pricing scheme that will still make it affordable. Kasi marami din naman sa kanila have had to reduce expenses in some areas. But I think the encouraging thing about this is when we spoke to the hotels, the resorts, andun yung willingness to help. So I don't think they will be charging astronomical prices at this point, because people are just looking forward to restarting the business, and itong mga tourism suppliers natin would want to do their share by coming up with attractive and affordable packages.
Usec, how does ito na naman ako, Mr. Definition ako. Ngayon, nabanggit niya naman accommodations, but you also mentioned hotels and resorts. But what about accommodations na yung talagang maliliit, like, for example, Airbnb, yung mga ganyan? How do our protocols factor in these innumerable, and we don't even know kung ilan? And the fact of the matter is, this is not a regulated sector of the tourism industry. How do our protocols handle and factor in yung mga maliliit na nagpaparent ng pakwarto-kwarto, or yung bahay, or yung condo, and so on?
Well, tama yan. I think what's important here is to get the cooperation also of the LGUs, because right now ang gusto natin is, unang-una, we want the establishments to be accredited, by the Department of Tourism, kasi parang yan ang seal of good housekeeping mo. On top of the accreditation, the establishments must also secure a certificate of authority to operate from the Department of Tourism. So this is the proof that they've already complied with minimum requirements with respect to health and safety protocols. So ang basic question is, paano naman yung mga iba na hindi sakop ng Department of Tourism? So dito pumapasok yung namin. We want to encourage them to have themselves accredited, and the way to do this is to get also the cooperation of the local government unit, so that halos sabayan pag bago bigyan ng permit ng LGU, sana meron na ring accreditation ng Department of Tourism.
Usec, are you also monitoring the health of the industry? Kasi halimbawa, gaano karami yung mga nagsara na, wala nang balak, hindi na kaya na magbukas uli. Are you also monitoring these things? Anong percentage kaya ng industry ang loss na? Write-off na sila for maybe at least 2 years? Meron ba kayong ganung monitoring?
Merong monitoring. Well, unahin natin yung pagpasok muna ng foreign tourists. So alam naman natin na pagdating nung second half of March until the present, hindi na pwedeng pumasok yung mga foreign nationals with certain exceptions. So dahil halos wala nang pumapasok na turista, pati yung revenue naapektuhan. So based on our estimate, from January to end of August, siguro ang na-record pa lang natin na foreign tourists nasa 1.3 million. At this time last year, January to August, nasa 5.5 million na tayo. So if you do the math, mga minus 75%, So sa revenue halos ganun din, minus 75, minus 76%. Now in terms of yung tinatanong ninyo na ilan doon sa mga stakeholders ang apektuhan na, no? And ipapaliwanag ko kung bakit
Nawawala siya.
Bumabagal yata yung feed ni Usec.
Nawala lang yung audio. Kasi namomroblema yung ano, di ba, yung mga tourism associations eh. They were complaining. Saka hindi ba yung ano yung ayudas kanila na inaprubahan at least na ibalik eh. Yung sa help for the industry at least na ibalik, although kulang pa rin daw.
But I think kahit na yata si Usec.
Usec's coming back.
Now,
Yes, sir.
Go ahead,
para
sir.
lang masagot ko kung ilang percent na, no?
Yeah,
Yung sa survey namin, 82% na sinurvey namin have been affected, no, in one way or another. So, paano naapektuhan? It's either no work, no pay, or leave without pay, or nagsara yung business, or natanggal sa trabaho. So, dito na papasok ngayon yung napakahalagang financial assistance na kailangan natin mabigay, hindi lamang doon sa tourism enterprises, no, pati na rin doon sa workers. So we're working very closely with government agencies so that we can provide a lifeline, no, to our tourism partners para naman just to help them to restart their respective businesses.
All right. Okay.
Okay. Maraming salamat po, Tourism Undersecretary Benito Bengzon. Sir, thank you po for joining us tonight.
Thank you po.
Salamat po.
Travel bubble pala. Akala ko pwede na magbagyo
Tama
eh.
sa weekend. Tama sa weekend. Wala pa rin ako
Hindi
pupuntahan.
pwede. Kailangan NGCQ ka.
Wala pa rin ako. Ano pa?
Wala tayong lusot doon.
That's a good question. Sa pagkakaalam nyo, I really don't know, ano bang mga MGCQ areas na accessible sa atin?
Yung mga beach sa Visayas and Mindanao.
MGCQ, malayo-layo yun.
Wala, no? I mean, what's the nearest
Pero,
MGCQ sa atin?
Tatanggapin ka ba nila?
Oo.
Yun na nga, ayaw nila
Ako rin tanongin, i-regulate ba nila yung number of tourists? Di ba? So,
Yun lang yan. And,
yun? So, hihingi ka ng permit beforehand. Parang
magre-register ka.
Ka-quarantine ka.
Register ka na.
Taga-metro man sila.
Tapos,
may fever ka. Balik.
Quarantine ka, 4 na araw, ubos na yung long weekend mo.
14 ayaw nila ng taga-metro.
tapos pag nag-beach ka, kailangan naka-face mask at face shield ka pa rin.
Oo naman, PPE.
Pwede yata hanggang Cavite, pwede. Pare-pareho tayong GCQ eh.
Hindi, pero ang sabi ni Usec, di ba, MGCQ?
Kailangan MGCQ.
Tayo GCQ eh.
Yeah.
Tayo GCQ, pwede tayo bisita. Diba?
And minsan
Saan ka
minsan yung mga LGUs
ganon.
sa Baywalk, yung swimming sa Baywalk. Wala pa gumagamit.
May Boracay na sa Manila Bay. May Boracay na sa Manila Bay.
Sina namin, nandyan lang. Nakakaroon na kami white beach, nandyan lang.
Okay.
Kasi remember, a lot of LGUs refuse entry to people coming from yung areas that are restricted at a higher level, like MGCQ, baka hindi pumayag ng mga taga-GCQ.
And you can expect, I mean, in all seriousness, you can expect obviously a lot of confusion. I have some friends na nagpaplano lang magpuntang Laguna, and they had yung bibisitahin nila had to warn them na teka muna, may mga checkpoint dito. Yung iba dito may kasamang bata, fina-fine per child na kasama ito. So, and you can imagine from municipality to municipality, province to province, maybe even barangay to barangay, di ba? And in some places street to street, di ba? Kanya-kanyang patakaran.
Yeah.
But hopefully it opens up. I mean, ano rin naman talaga yung mga numbers na binanggit ni Usec, di ba? Na it went down by 65-75% talagang. This is still the dilemma for everyone. We really need to reopen this.
Siyempre, gusto din ng industry na magdatingan ng mga turista eh. So, subukan nyo na mag-travel. Baka naman
Sabihan niyo na lang kami. Sabihan niyo na lang kami.
Ako nandun sa staycation.
Staycation.
Doon pa rin ako.
Limang buwan na ako
Teka, uy, huwag natin pabayan ang weekend natin. Let's stop delaying our weekend.
Okay. Call ako dyan.
Oh, kailangan pa plansyan yung mga speedo ko para para sa beach.
Tama na. Sumusobra na.
Pa-plansyan niya.
Yan ang mga dapat sinesensor ng MTRCB.
And that will be... Pero I think it's important to note it's important to note ang sabi ni Chairwoman Arenas kanina, the law is still there, so Section 3C is still there. They're just not implementing it. Because it's the call of the times. Pero it's still there, it can still be enforced, and that includes political aspects.
Kailangan magtanong tayo sa taga-Congress kung totoo.
Yan na naman po si Edlinga, walang tiwala sa ating political leader.
Talaga.
Sige. Magpahinga ka na. Mag-weekend ka na.
And that will be all for this weekend edition of The Chiefs. We hope that you can go to the beach. We hope that what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. I'm Edlinga of One News.
I'm Mami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
And Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5.
I'm Robbie Alampay, and we are One News.